Welcome to this ABC 10 Plus special, The Wild West of Education. I'm investigative reporter Andie Judson. For the past 2 years, ABC 10 has been digging into Highlands Community Charter and Technical Schools, one of California's largest adult charter school systems. Our investigation uncovered serious financial misconduct and questionable practices, including inflated attendance numbers and the use of millions of dollars in luxury travel. That led to the resignation of Executive Director Murdoch Smith and triggered a scathing state audit. Now more than $180 million in taxpayer money is under scrutiny, and there are growing demands for major reform. In response, Highlands has brought in a new leader, Jonathan Raymond. In his first on-camera interview since the audit, Raymond sat down with me to answer tough questions. He promised change and revealed how he plans to rebuild the school. From fixing financial oversight to confronting a toxic work culture, even asking the entire school board to resign, he says big changes are coming. This is our full conversation. A lot has happened over the past few months here at Highlands. Huge layoffs, the state audit's findings, CDE is now asking for millions back. What are your thoughts about it all?
Yeah, well, first, Andie, I want to thank you and really welcome you and your team to come to Highlands. You've had the chance over the last 2 years to, review thousands of documents. You've interviewed, 40 plus whistleblowers, and you've really learned a lot. And I wanted to emphasize that not one of the whistleblowers, ever said that this was a waste, that the mission was really important, and but what they wanted and they really pushed for was strong leadership, and that's what we're in the process of doing. And my first order, and since I even arrived, was to begin to take a look at the audit, to begin implementing those reforms, to really push. We pushed to have a new board governance. We're implementing all the policy recommendations to ensure that we have compliance around attendance, around our spending, and most importantly, to build that strong team so we can focus on serving and meeting the needs of our students.
With all that's happened, there is concern around Highlands being shut down. Why take this job?
Yeah, well, I think it's really simple, Andie. It's because of the mission and because of who we serve. And I just want to remind your viewers, who they are, right? They're immigrants. Our largest populations come from Afghanistan and Ukraine, and we know what's happened in those countries between the chaos and the wars that are going on. Our average age of our immigrants, they're refugees, or those that have been incarcerated, are 40 years old. 70% of them have children, and over 60% are women, and they come here because they want to learn English. They want to find jobs. They want to find ways to become part of their country. They're survivors. They want to be seen. They want to belong. I just met one as I walked over here who's in Afghanistan. And I asked him how his family's doing. And he thanked me for just even asking. So they want to be seen. They want to be part of this community. And Highlands serves those. We're really unique that way. Nobody else does. And we're at a real, I think, inflection point because of what the Trump administration does and their new orders. I mean, read Cal Matters report yesterday. So we know it's a really difficult environment. Nobody else serves them but Highlands. So it's really, really important. And our students, they energize me. And that's why I'm here.
So as executive director, what's your plan? Tell me about your vision and immediate priorities, especially given all of the state audit's findings and some really concerning issues that it highlighted.
So I think it's about making sure that we implement those findings, Andie. We're working with our team to make sure that we're doing attendance. We've got our scheduling, new bell scheduling, simple things around compliance, making sure that all contracts. At our last board meeting, I said I'm bringing every contract, one for $11,000, because I want that kind of transparency. So we're implementing the reforms. I'm reviewing everything. I'm looking at our curriculum, because we need to do better for our students, and I'm looking at credit card statements, because there's no wasteful spending under my watch. So it's implementing the reforms. It's building a high quality team. I'm bringing in a chief academic officer who knows K-12, a chief operating officer to ensure we have compliance, and it's doing everything we can to build Highlands back better.
Gotcha. And are those positions you just named, are those new?
Those are new positions, yeah. We had them approved by the board. I told the board that, when it comes to the education, that's our main business, right? We're in a classroom today. This is where the magic happens between our teachers and our students. And we need to be high quality. They deserve the very best. And we need to bring our best, and that requires leadership.
Going off of that too, you say that you're going to bring in new leadership, things are changing here, but the audit did find several employees lacked the experience, education, and credentials needed and required for their positions, but they were employed due to nepotism or personal connections. Brian Hamilton, Disa Cameron, Brian Davis, to name a few. According to your website and our sources, these employees remain here, some even still in leadership positions. How do you justify that?
So I'm looking at it all, right? I've been here now just about 2 weeks. I'm reviewing all of our positions. I've asked to see, position descriptions, qualifications. So we're going to go through it, line by line. The new nepotism policy, we enforced it at a recent board meeting. That resulted in one of our board members being voted off. So their reforms, these policies, they're real, and I'm going to get to them. And if we have folks that aren't qualified, we'll remove them, or we'll remove those positions.
Mm-hmm. I think what we're hearing is that, we had this massive 87% of folks got laid off, and now we're seeing these same individuals, the members of leadership responsible for those serious problems that happened here, being put back in under new, titles and positions. So how can you regain the public's trust when that's happening?
Right. So again, prior leadership made some decisions before I got here, and I'm just reviewing it all. Restoring that trust is really important. I take it seriously. That's my job, and that's why, before I even arrived, I asked board members to resign, because I knew we needed a new governance team. The board had been here, again, not pointing fingers, but we needed to help restore public trust. So I'm bringing in new leadership, and I'll be reviewing those that are here. And again, taking into account all the decisions that the prior team made.
Mm-hmm, gotcha. And so on July 2nd, Highlands Board approved $90,000 to be spent on a lobbyist, in part to oppose AB 84, which is a bill that focuses on accountability specifically at charter schools. If you're turning things around here, why spend public funds to oppose legislation that's aimed at increasing oversight?
Yeah, so Andie, it's about us bringing in expertise and knowledge. We're fighting on so many fronts. We want to be transparent. We want to tell our story. We want to make sure people understand all the reforms we're making. And we have a lot of legislators. We have government officials. We have regulators that, we've got to get in front of, and we have to tell our story. And it's not about us opposing or supporting legislation. We're about surviving and telling the Highlands story and why it's so important to keep this school open. And if our legislators care about immigrants and refugees and previously incarcerated, they'll work hard and they won't abandon Highlands.
Mm-hmm. Respectfully, though, I am going to push you on that one, because do you think it's appropriate that public funds are spent on lobbying?
So it's advocacy, right? It's important to be telling our story. Right now there's a lot of one-way stories. There's been a lot of sensationalization around this audit. As I said, fraud is a really loaded word. And the auditor made it clear in their briefing to legislative staff and the legislator there was no fraud. In fact, your whistleblowers have said it wasn't waste. This is an important mission, and the school shouldn't be closed. So trying to advance an agenda by sensationalizing, we're trying to tell our story about the reforms that we're doing, about what makes sense in some of these legislative recommendations, and I can offer my expertise, having been a school district superintendent and now leading a charter school network. That's a unique position, and I take it as a responsibility, being here in Sacramento, to really tell the truth around what can work and what can't, because I've been on both sides.
Gotcha. So I was talking with a whistleblower before this interview, and part of the concern specifically with that and why I'm focusing on it is because there's been a pattern with Highlands of spending money in ways that benefit school leadership and benefit, politicians and, a number of powerful people, and don't benefit the students. And that's the concern, is this part of a repeated pattern of this ultimately money continuing to go to lobbying and to, politicians and to making connections in those communities rather than the students. Right. What's your response to that concern?
So, absolutely not. And I appreciate that concern, and I'm willing to talk to as many whistleblowers, people that want to keep this school open. Right now, we're fighting for our life, Andie, and so we got to do what we have to do to keep our school open. But the real focus is making sure that all the resources go towards supporting those students. And the wasteful spending, it's not going to happen on my watch.
Okay. Highlands leadership has spent millions on travel, five-star resorts, golf events, parties, lobbying, to name a few. Where that money was not going was to the students. Are you recalibrating how Highlands spends public money to ensure it benefits students and especially their success?
Yeah, so, I wasn't here when a lot of those decisions were made, and a lot of mistakes were made. And a lot of money, was spent in the way that was inappropriate. And it's not going to happen on my watch. That kind of work are things that I'm starting to review. That I'm looking at credit card statements. I don't even have one, and I'm not going to have, a Highlands credit card. But under my watch, we're not going to waste public resources. We're going to direct them where they're most needed in our classrooms for our students, and that's what they deserve.
So the audit also found Highlands intentionally misreported attendance. Students checked in and then left. There was inflated class sizes. Basically, all of that resulted in taxpayer money from both the Department of Education and the Department of Human Services for students being spent when they were supposed to benefit students and their success in their education, but they weren't receiving that education. How are you going to fix that?
So we're changing our policies around attendance. I was just with a staff member who's going through putting in place standard operating procedures around how we take attendance, staff being trained. We've adjusted our bell schedule. Again, we serve a really unique population. As I shared, 70% are parents. They work 2 jobs, multiple jobs. They're caring for a lot of family members. A traditional K-12 high school bell schedule, is really challenging. Yet that's the environment in which we work. So we have to do everything we can to ensure that our students understand that this is a privilege and a responsibility. They have to be here. This is where the learning takes place. And we need to help support them with whatever barriers they have to getting back to school. But we're paying attention to it, and it's a priority, and it's not going to be overlooked, again, by our team.
Mm-hmm. How are you specifically, to narrow in on one of those, with the inflated class sizes? How is that being fixed?
Yeah, so we have a new board policy that has laid out class sizes, 30 to 1. So, we'll be enforcing it. How? I'm going to be walking in classrooms. These are public learning spaces. I invite you to come on out, and I'm saying that to all of our partners, all of our legislators. Come see where the learning takes place, and hold us accountable, force us to be better, but give us a chance to continue to serve.
Gotcha. And then with the attendance too, do you plan to continue to use the Brain app?
So I'm actually meeting with the folks that have done the Brain work. I want to learn more about it. I mean, it's important that we have a good system to be able to take attendance, but it has to be reliable, it has to be dependable. That responsibility is both with our teachers, and with our students. So, haven't made any determination. It's all part of my learning. Again, just been here about 2 weeks.
So let's chat a little bit about the credentialing piece, because that's been a big issue, especially recently. How do you plan to retain qualified educators rather than relying on uncredentialed staff or paraeducators to teach?
Right. Yeah, so, we've gone through that process, a lot of layoffs. You mentioned it earlier in our meeting. So we're working with an education institution, UMass Global. We've got an internship program to help teachers clear their credential. We're only looking to hire, K-12 single or multi-subject credentialed teachers. It's a real competitive market. San Juan, Twin Rivers, Sac City, they're all trying to hire teachers. We want teachers who want to be here for that mission, but it's our job to work really closely with them, partnered with UMass Global, and we're looking at upgrading our curriculum. As I said, I'm reviewing everything from top to bottom to make sure that we have the best tools in place and create a professional learning environment so our teachers can thrive and be successful.
And so your predecessor, Bill McGuire, repeatedly said that CTC switched the credentials on Highlands and that was a big problem for you all. CTC told me in a statement that they haven't changed anything. What happened there?
Yeah, so I think the audit calls it out, right? There's a lot of hands that were, not doing what they were supposed to do or providing the clear guidance. But, irrespective on that, Andy, it's been made clear. So my job is to make sure that our teachers are credentialed, that they're able to and that they're supported and that they can teach the subjects and they're qualified to teach the subjects in which they're assigned. And they get the best support and the resources to be able to do that. Again, I'm not focused on what was or unclear, here it is now. It's really clear to me. So that's what we're doing.
Gotcha. Dozens of our whistleblowers say they were harassed, they were pushed out or fired, and even retaliated against after speaking out. Some of them say they still suffer emotionally and even professionally because of it. What's your message specifically to them?
Well, first, I want to thank them, for their service to the school, and it's really unfortunate. I think the school let them down. We let our students down by the mistakes that were made. And I think what they have said and what I have heard is, there's a lot of beauty that goes on in this school, and we need to stay open. And so we're going to do that. And they want us to be better, so we're going to be better. And all that was done on, with the prior teams, again, it's not going to happen on my watch. We're in the people business. We're only as good as the people that are here. We've got to rebuild our culture, and it's a culture of care, and it's a mindset that's focused on meeting the needs of our students, and that's a priority for me.
Mm-hmm. And going off of that, staff here previously described a toxic and cult-like workplace. Will there be specific culture changes under you? And if so, what kind of policies, how do you implement that when it's, the culture, it's on such a personal level?
Yeah, so I think it's how you just ended, it's on a personal level. I've already met twice, I've had all staff meetings. I understand that, in the past it was all done by Zoom. That's not my style. The staff's going to see me. They're going to meet with me. I've met with our principals. I'm meeting with directors. I meet with our custodians and the folks that are taking care of our grounds. Because again, right, we're a people organization. So it starts with me, and then it starts with the folks that I hire. And it's also about setting high expectations. We're only going to be successful if we work together and if we focus on meeting the needs of our students. And that's a shift here, but it's a shift that has to happen. And again, it starts with me having high expectations and holding folks accountable for creating the culture of care.
So Highlands has said for years it's operating transparency while delaying or denying public records requests and avoiding media interviews like this one we're sitting down today. By sitting down with us right now, are you committing to transparency?
Absolutely, Andie, and we're already providing it. As I said, I shared at our board meeting that we're bringing all contracts, to the board, no matter what the dollar amount is. I provide a letter I send out to our staff every week, just letting them know, again, right, reinforcing the messages, letting them know what's happening. I make myself available. We're doing videos. That's why we have hired a team of experts to provide more transparency, to be able to communicate what's happening here. And as I said, these are the public's, learning spaces and places. They're open. So, come visit. Come be here, and again, hold me accountable for being transparent, because I've said I will, and I'll make myself available to you whenever you want, Andie.
I appreciate it. I will. So.
I know.
Glad to hear it. What's your message to people who are watching this interview, especially the staff and students who feel let down by what's happened?
Yeah, well, I just want them to know that I see them, that I believe in them, and that we're fighting for them, and that we're doing everything we can, because this is their school. They came here and they stay here because they believe in the mission. And we're doing everything we can to keep the school open, to be able to also improve the school. And I want them to know that, they're worth fighting for. So I'm here to fight.
So if we sit down, let's say in another year, what do you hope has been done by that point? What does success look like in the first year you're here?
Yeah, well, I think success looks like, we're open, right? We're still here. We got students in classrooms, and we got teachers. We've got, an abundance of K-12 credentialed teachers. In fact, we have teachers knocking on our door to come here to serve. We're able to provide both the academic and the supports to our students that they need, that meet their learning styles and that meet their needs. That we have visitors coming, that we can become an exemplar, and that I've got a board that's in place, that's holding me accountable, that is pushing us, and that the story is Highlands rebuilt back better. I'm glad they're still open.
And going off of that, what is going on with the board right now? And are you
Sure.
part of that, of like picking board members? Because I know those are in normal school districts publicly,
Correct.
elected, but in charter schools they're not. So talk to me a little bit about that process.
So we need 3 to have a quorum, Andy. So we have 3. And we'll start to add some board members back, looking at skills and qualifications and connections into the community, and I'll be involved in that process, you're right. But all the board has committed, to resigning and to being replaced, and I take them for their word, and I thank them for their service.
Where do things stand with the California Department of Education? Because I know they asked for millions of dollars back, which is a concern for you all. What's going on with that currently?
Yeah, so we're trying to have conversations with them. We're trying to get to the table and see what we can do. I mean, let's be clear. We can't pay back $180 million. We would close. And if we close, that sends ripple effects, in other school districts like our authorizer. But more importantly is we don't get to serve that critical population of immigrants and refugees and the formerly incarcerated. They'd be out. So we're trying to sit down, and at the same time, we're also going to use every means to appeal and to use the administrative process, to ensure that we can stay open.
Mm-hmm. And what's it been like so far working with your authorizer, Twin Rivers Unified? They were the authorizer when all of this was happening. What kind of messaging are you getting from them?
So I have a relationship with Steve Martinez. And we've had a phone call recently, and we've agreed to work together. And he has told me specifically, we need Highlands to survive, and we need you to be sustainable, and we need to work together to meet our needs and to meet your needs. So I'm really encouraged by that.
Mm-hmm. Do you know if they still plan to get an authorizer and facilities fee for overseeing Highlands?
Well, they do, and we'll be having conversations with them about that. Again, I've been on the other side. I know the challenges of being in a public school district and having charters to oversee and to authorize. I think I had 9 or more when I was in Sac City. But again, it's about having good relationships with them and partnerships, so it isn't just about trying to review them when they come up for reauthorization. It's an ongoing process, and it starts with the word you used, relationships.
What's the current status of Highlands leases? I'm curious specifically if like the 555 Capitol Mall is still being leased, and that condominium in San Diego as well.
Yeah, so we're looking to get subcontractors in all those spaces. My office is here on Grand, and the same thing with the space in San Diego. Again, bad choices. We're not, and under my watch, we're not making those kind of choices. We need to be here where our students are.
With the graduation rates, they're estimated between 2 and 13%, very low. And I know they're low for adult schools in general because of the population, but with what we've heard from sources is that with the amount of money Highlands is receiving, they should not be this low. How are you shifting, the focus, which has been on enrollment growth, to student success? Are you planning to raise those graduation rates?
So absolutely, yeah, they're way too low. They're unacceptable. So one thing you'll see a year from now is you'll see, better metrics that we're using, like let's make sure folks are staying in school, that they're continuing, they're completing courses. What help do they need and what supports do they need in order to do that? And ultimately they're successful. Is it to learn English? Is it to get a high school diploma? Is it to get a job? All of those. But it's what you measure gets done, right? You measure enrollment, you have a lot of enrollment. When you measure course completion rates, graduation rates, those things get done too. So that's where our focus is, Andy.
Yeah, gotcha. And then with, you named it multiple times throughout this interview, it's a very vulnerable population that, you're educating here. And part of, our job is we don't just talk to the whistleblowers. We don't just talk to the educators here. We're talking to students, and a lot of them also feel let down by what has happened. What is your message to these communities, to your students?
I think it's being transparent, Andy. It's it's apologizing for mistakes that were made. For, our students show up one day and they hear their teachers being let go. That's wrong. So I've been meeting with the organizations that support them, right? Salam, La Family, La Familia, and we're developing strong relationships. They're supporting us because they know how important our mission is, and they're giving me some trust, right? They're giving me some time, to show it. But again, what I say to our students is, we're fighting for you. This is your school, and you deserve better. You will get better under our team.
Mm-hmm. Anything I missed that you wanted to cover?
I wanted to thank you, Andie, for you and your team. I mean, this reporting, exposed areas that needed to be improved, the mistakes that were made, unacceptable uses of public resources. And, without your reporting for the last 2 years, I frankly wouldn't be here. So, I wanted to thank you for what you've done, and for the whistleblowers. It took a lot of courage and, and really being brave. And I want to work with everybody who wants to make this school better.
Mr. Raymond made big promises about change, but whether he delivers, only time will tell. We'll continue following this story and, of course, keep you updated. Now, state lawmakers are also stepping in, proposing 2 bills aimed at reforming charter schools across California. Assembly Bill 84 by Assemblymember Al Murasucci would create a governor-appointed education inspector general to prevent and detect fraud statewide. Meanwhile, the Senate Bill 414 by Senator Angelique Ashby calls for stronger fiscal oversight and quicker investigations when fraud is suspected at charter schools. We'll be tracking these bills and updating you on whether they pass and what charter school reform could look like moving forward. To watch our full series, The Wild West of Education, and other investigations like this one, go up to the News tab and scroll down to the Investigations category. Thanks for watching. I'm Andie Judson. See you next time.